everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to do a deep dive into the mind of a Roman emperor. Get ready to explore meditations, the personal reflections of Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, and we're going beyond just reading the text. We're going to be um, dissecting a very unique source. It's an AI-narrated audiobook
Hmm.
with accompanying text on YouTube.
So it's kind of like having Marcus Aurelius whispering ancient wisdom directly into our ears.
Directly into our ears, exactly.
I gotta admit, when I first heard about meditations, I pictured something super dense and intimidating. But listening to this audiobook, it feels surprisingly relatable,
I agree.
even for someone who, isn't a philosophy buff or anything.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that makes meditation so compelling.
Yeah.
It wasn't written for a public audience. It's more like a personal journal
Yeah.
where Marcus Aurelius is just grappling with his own thoughts and challenges,
Yeah.
applying the principles of Stoicism to his everyday life.
Oh, okay. So for those of us who need a refresher, what exactly is Stoicism all about?
Well, imagine this.
Imagine facing down um, barbarian hordes or a devastating plague, not with despair, but with a sense of duty
Okay.
and acceptance.
Okay.
That's the essence of Stoicism, facing whatever life throws your way with a calm and rational mind. It's about virtue, reason, and living in harmony with, the natural order of the universe.
So basically, it's about not freaking out when things get tough. That sounds pretty useful, even in our modern world.
Right.
I think we could all use a little more of that stoic calm in our lives.
Absolutely. And one of the core principles of Stoicism that really comes through in the audiobook is the importance of focusing on what we can actually control.
Which, spoiler alert, isn't a whole lot.
Uh-huh.
But seriously, it's so easy to get caught up worrying about things we have absolutely no power over.
Right. Aurelius constantly reminds us that we can't control external events.
Yeah. The weather, other people's actions, even our own health to some extent.
Mm.
But we can control our own thoughts, our reactions, and our choices. It's about focusing on our internal world, on the things that we can directly influence.
He uses this great analogy of the mind being like a fortress, right?
Exactly. He says, no enemy can breach the walls of your mind unless you let them in. External forces might test you, but your inner fortress, your will, and your reason remain unconquerable unless you surrender them.
It's like building a mental shield against all the chaos and negativity out there.
Precisely. And this ties into another key theme we hear throughout the audiobook. Acceptance,
Yeah.
especially acceptance of death.
Yeah, he doesn't sugarcoat it either. There are parts where he gets pretty graphic about the whole decomposition process. Not exactly light listening.
It's true, it can be a little bit intense. But while it might seem morbid, contemplating our mortality helps us to gain a clearer perspective on what truly matters in life. It's a wake-up call to prioritize what's truly important and to live more fully now.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this all ties together. If we're constantly worried about things that we can't control, including our own eventual demise, we're kind of missing out on actually living.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, we often get so caught up in the anxieties of our modern lives that we forget to step back and ask ourselves, what are we truly afraid of?
Yeah.
Are those fears rational? Or are we giving them more power than they deserve?
Yeah, it's like putting things in perspective. I mean, deadlines and traffic jams, sure, they can be stressful, but are they really as life or death as, say, facing a gladiator in the Colosseum?
Precisely. And speaking of things we often stress about, let's talk about how Marcus Aurelius dealt with other people, especially those who might have rubbed him the wrong way. I mean, imagine being emperor and having to deal with all sorts of difficult personalities.
Yeah, talk about a test of patience. So how did he manage to stay so level-headed when dealing with people who were, shall we say, less than ideal?
Well, he emphasized justice and kindness, even towards those who wronged him. He understood that everyone is acting from their own understanding of good, even if it's flawed.
So it's about having empathy for even the most challenging people.
Exactly. He doesn't advocate for being passive in the face of injustice, but he does suggest that we act to correct wrongs with a detached understanding that the wrongdoer is ultimately acting out of ignorance, not malice.
So respond with wisdom and compassion rather than getting caught up in an emotional reaction.
Got it. There's this one passage that really struck me where he compares sin committed through lust versus anger.
Ah, yes. He argues that those who sin through lust are arguably more to be condemned than those who sin through anger.
Okay, I'm going to need you to unpack that one for me because on the surface, it seems a little counterintuitive.
Well, what he's saying is that acting out of anger, out of that sense of being wronged, might have a semblance of justification,
Right.
whereas someone who acts out of lust is driven purely by their own desires. So it's about recognizing the difference between reacting to a perceived injustice and actively choosing to do something harmful just because it feels good in the moment.
Yeah,
Makes you think, doesn't it?
it does. And this ties into the Stoic concept of living in accordance with nature.
Okay.
For Aurelius, this meant understanding our rational and social nature as human beings, recognizing our interconnectedness, and acting for the common good. It's a call to consider the bigger picture, even when dealing with personal conflicts.
And he even applies that to, dealing with death, right? There's that powerful image of bodies being swept away by the torrent of the universe. Like it's all part of a natural cycle.
Precisely. He uses vivid imagery to highlight the cyclical nature of existence. The audiobook mentions the seed analogy, how a seed must die to give life to a new plant. He's saying that change, including death, is part of that universal flow.
Okay, so we're all just part of this constant ebb and flow of existence. Instead of resisting it, we should embrace the fact that change is inevitable. It's a pretty mind-blowing concept when you really stop and think about it.
Absolutely. And, he's not just speaking theoretically here.
Mm.
Remember, he was writing this as Emperor of Rome, dealing with wars, political intrigue, personal loss. He had to put these principles into practice under immense pressure.
That's what I find so fascinating about meditations. It's not just some abstract philosophical treatise. It's a real person grappling with real challenges, using these Stoic principles as tools for navigating the ups and downs of life.
And that's what makes these ideas so enduring and applicable to our own lives, even centuries later.
Okay, so we've talked about controlling what we can, accepting what we can't, and acting with reason and kindness. But how do we figure out what truly matters in the grand scheme of things? I
Yeah.
think that's the question we're all trying to answer.
I think so too. Yeah, and Aurelius encourages us to kind of detach from those external markers of success,
Yeah.
the things that we're told we should be striving for. And focus instead on things that he considers to be truly enduring, our character, our actions, and our contributions to the common good. It's about shifting our focus from what we have to who we are.
It's like he's saying that all those things that we often stress about, our possessions or our status, even how we look, are ultimately pretty insignificant when you consider the bigger picture.
Right. He even compares worldly pursuits to, things like dogs fighting over a bone or fish being lured by bait. He's illustrating how these things that can seem so important in the moment can distract us from what truly matters.
So are you saying we should just give up on everything and become hermits? Because that doesn't seem very practical in the real world.
Not at all. Stoicism isn't about withdrawing from the world. It's about engaging with the world in a mindful and deliberate way, guided by reason and virtue.
Okay, so we're supposed to participate in society, but not get caught up in all the drama and superficiality. That sounds like a tricky balance to strike.
It is. It is. He emphasizes doing your duty, contributing to the well-being of others, but doing so with a sense of detachment. He reminds us that we can't control the outcome of our actions, no matter how hard we try.
So it's about focusing on the process, not the results.
Exactly. And that brings us back to that core Stoic principle of accepting what's beyond your control.
Mm-hmm.
You might work tirelessly for just cause. You might, pour your heart and soul into something, and things still might not turn out the way you hoped.
Right.
That's where the practice of acceptance comes in. It allows you to maintain a sense of inner peace even when things don't go your way.
That's a pretty radical way to think about success and failure. It's not about achieving some external goal, but about, acting with integrity and intention, regardless of the outcome.
And he goes even further, suggesting that we should find joy in the act of living virtuously itself. Every action, no matter how small, can be an opportunity to exercise virtue and contribute to the common good.
So instead of getting bogged down by all the what ifs and the should haves, we should just focus on doing the best that we can right here, right now. It's about finding meaning and purpose in those everyday moments.
Precisely. That's what he means by living in accordance with nature. Aligning your actions with your rational and social purpose as a human being. It's about finding meaning and purpose in the simple act of being human.
I love that. It's such a powerful reminder that we don't need to wait for, some grand achievement or external validation to find fulfillment. That sense of peace and purpose can be found within ourselves, in the way we choose to live each day.
And it's a message that resonates across time and cultures. Even though, Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor, facing challenges we can hardly imagine, his insights into human nature and the search for meaning are remarkably relevant to our lives today.
We all face challenges. We all deal with difficult people, and we all grapple with the meaning of life. And here we have this guy writing almost 2,000 years ago, offering wisdom that still feels so fresh and insightful.
It's amazing, isn't it? And that speaks to the enduring power of philosophy, doesn't it? Its ability to help us grapple with these big questions, these timeless dilemmas of human existence. It provides frameworks for understanding ourselves and the world around us.
It's like a roadmap for the soul, helping us navigate the complexities of life. And in this case, Marcus Aurelius is our guide, sharing his own hard-won wisdom for navigating the ups and downs of being human.
And we've only scratched the surface of his meditations in this deep dive. There's so much richness and depth to explore in his writing. I really encourage you to check out the full text.
So for all you deep divers out there, if you're even remotely intrigued by what we've discussed today, I highly encourage you to seek out the full text of Meditations. It's a journey worth taking.
And keep in mind one of Marcus Aurelius's most powerful insights, I think.
Okay.
He says, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. So choose them wisely.
Wow. That's a lot to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the mind of Marcus Aurelius. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep. So much to think about. On that note, we've got a lot of comments and questions from our listeners, so I think it's time to dive into those.
Yeah, let's see what people are thinking.
Okay, so the first one, it says, how do we apply the Stoic idea of focusing on what we can control in a world where it feels like so much is out of our hands? Like, the economy is tanking or, our planet is in crisis.
That's a great question. And, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the problems that we're facing in the world today. But remember, Aurelius wasn't writing in some idyllic time. I mean, he was dealing with plagues and wars and all kinds of political turmoil. So what he's saying is, even in the midst of chaos, we still have a choice about how we respond. We can choose to focus on our own sphere of influence. Maybe that means volunteering in our community or making more conscious consumer choices or simply being kinder and more patient with the people around us.
So even if we can't, single-handedly solve global warming or fix the economy, we can still make a difference in our own little corner of the world.
Exactly. And, sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it's about finding those small acts of meaning and purpose that give us a sense of agency and hope.
Okay, so speaking of hope, this next question kind of touches on that. It says, Stoicism seems to be all about accepting whatever happens, even bad stuff. Doesn't that lead to apathy and inaction?
Right. That's a common misconception about Stoicism. But it's important to understand that acceptance doesn't mean resignation. It's not about passively accepting injustice or suffering. It's about acknowledging what is so that we can then act more effectively.
So it's like, once you've accepted the reality of a situation, you can then channel your energy into finding solutions or making positive changes.
Exactly. And remember, Aurelius talks about acting with justice and kindness.
Right.
So if you see something wrong in the world, you don't just shrug and say, well, that's just how things are. You try to make things better.
Yeah.
But you do so without getting bogged down by anger or resentment.
So it's about finding that balance between acceptance and action.
Exactly. And that's a lifelong practice.
Yeah.
It's something that we have to work at every day.
Okay, here's another question. It says, I'm struggling to find meaning and purpose in my life. How can Stoicism help me with that?
Well, I think that's where the concept of living in accordance with nature comes in. It's about understanding our role in the grand scheme of things.
Okay.
And recognizing that our purpose isn't necessarily to achieve some great fame or fortune, but simply to live virtuously, to be good human beings.
So even if we don't have a grand mission in life, our purpose can be found in the way we live each day, in our interactions with others and in the choices that we make.
Precisely. And sometimes those Small, everyday acts of kindness and virtue can be the most meaningful things that we do.
Okay, one more question. This one says, how do I deal with all the negativity and distractions in the world today? All the social media drama and the 24/7 news cycle. It's hard to find peace and quiet.
Right, and that's where Aurelius's analogy of the mind as a fortress becomes really powerful.
Yeah.
It's about being selective about what we allow to enter our minds.
Mhm.
Maybe that means limiting our exposure to the news and social media, or cultivating practices that help us to stay grounded and centered.
Like meditation.
Like meditation, exactly. Or
Mhm.
spending time in nature, or,
Yeah.
or simply being more present in our everyday lives.
Well, that's all the time we have for today, but I hope this deep dive into meditations has given you some food for thought.
Yeah, me too. And remember, these are just a few insights from this incredibly rich and complex work.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.